tape of the Joe Verde training program, How to Close More Sales. This program was designed by Joe to help you close more sales, overcome your customers' objections, stay off price on the lot, and hold gross. There is also homework and a quick quiz for you to fill out at the completion of each tape in this series. And now, let's begin. Here's Joe.
Okay, let's go to the next section. Turn over to page 9 in your workbook. While you're turning to page 9, I'll remind you of what we covered on the last tape. We've talked about your potential. We hopefully have pointed out, and hopefully you can see yourself selling a car or two more than you're delivering now. Hopefully you realize that everybody you're going to talk to is a buyer. I hope you understand that it's going to be what you do on the lot that's going to make closing and handling objections easier or tougher later down the road. The statistics, just to remind you of those again, if you're doing a better job than what we pointed out on that page, then what we found out is what your competition's doing. If you're doing follow-up and the competition isn't, you have the advantage. If you're presenting and demonstrating and the competition isn't, you certainly have the advantage. So use that information to your benefit. And just a tip, one thing I did when I first got back in the car business, I took that same basic page of statistics, carried it in my pocket for about 45 days and read it again and again every day. Because I had the same habit you had. We both learned how to pre-qualify people when they walked on the lot. I used to look at people and I'd either see a buyer, a looker, a shopper, or somebody who didn't look like they could afford the steering wheel, much less the car. We have to get out of that and realize that we can't guess who the buyers are. That's the most expensive game we play in sales. On this section, on page 9, again, we're still on getting you ready to sell more. There's some things that you have to do to sell more. It says understanding the selling process. In class, when we talk to people, and I was too, how many of y'all are uncomfortable closing? And you don't have to raise your hand, but when I say uncomfortable closing, you do a nice job, you make friends with people, you make them like you build some rapport, you visit, you get to the presentation, you do a nice job, and then you have to stop everything and then close. And that is uncomfortable if you do it that way. My goal is to show you some easier ways to close. Professional selling isn't telling people stuff. Professionals in sales ask a lot of questions. A close is just another question. So if my presentation is filled with questions and we get out of the car and say, Bob, it sure drove nice, didn't it? And he says, yeah. Well, Bob, sounds like we found a perfect car. Are you going to put it in your name or your company's name? That was just another question. That should just flow in there. It should be unnoticed. Most of us have been taught to close at step number 7. We get back off a demonstration drive and we say, well, what do you guys think? Well, yeah, we kind of like the car. And then we go to a tough-to-answer closing question that puts all the emphasis on price and puts all the pressure on making a decision. And we close with, well, what do you think? Well, that's pretty nice. And then well, if we can work it out today the way we want to buy it, can we sell you guys a car? All the emphasis on the wrong things, on price. And the question's hard to answer. We've got to get away from those types of closing questions. And I think that understanding the selling process helps an awful lot. Second thing we're going to talk about is tracking and monitoring your progress. How many of y'all want to improve your closing ratio? Raise your hand. Everybody in the back of the room? Anybody? Now, let me ask you another question. Keep your hand up for a second. If you know your closing ratio, keep your hand up. Oh, I see all the hands went down, except for that one guy. How can you improve something if you don't know what it is? You know, when we talk about improving your closing ratio, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they don't track what they do. We don't know how many people we talk to on the lot. We don't know how many presentations we give. We don't know if we have a 20% closing ratio or a 50% closing ratio. When we try to find out, most of us cheat. We leave out, well, I'm not counting a service customer. He said he's just looking. You have to count the opportunities to do business if you want to find your actual closing ratio. But one of the things you have to do in sales, and not just in closing and objections, but you have to monitor what's going on. You've got to keep up with stuff. We're going to give you, there are many things to talk about, but for closing and objections, there's 2 things that you need to track and monitor definitely. And then we want to talk to you a little bit about setting some clear goals for improvement as a closer. Setting some goals for improvement on the number of units that you're going to sell. Turn over to page 10. Let's talk about the selling process. Now, when we sell partly on the lot and we sell partly inside. It helps to understand what we do in each area. Most people, or too many salespeople, think you just tell a customer everything you know and then you try to close. Well, that's the least effective way to close. Selling is a process, and you can take any process and break it down step by step. Out on the lot, and again, curb to curb. Out on the lot out here, we're supposed to, number one, build value. We're supposed to build value. Now, I already wrote this on the board. If we were just looking curb to curb and I hadn't drawn this little line here, how much of our time should be spent with a customer building value, getting them excited about owning the car? 60, 70, 80, 90% is what we normally hear in class. Somewhere around 75, 80%. So we should spend about this much time building value and this much time doing the paperwork or negotiating, whatever you're going to do inside. Now, number one, we're supposed to build value. And we're going to take this and put it in picture form in a second and break it down even more. When we talk about building value, we do that by following the basics. So, number two down here, after we built value, we followed the basics, then we have to close. Now, when we say close, we're still talking about on the lot. We're not inside yet. When I say close, what I mean is get a commitment to own the vehicle now. Not, Bob, what do you think? That's not closing. Do you want to go inside and see what we can do? That's not closing. That's not getting a commitment. So, number one, we build value. Number two, we close. Now, when you close, do you ever get any objections? Do people ever say, well, we'll think it over and get back to you? No, I want to check with a friend. Or, no, I want to check the competition. So when you try to close, you build value. You say, Bob, drove pretty nice, didn't it? Yes. And we're going to put it in your name or your wife's name. You tried to close. And he says, no, I think I'm going to hold off a little bit. Number three, you handle objections. So now you have an objection that you have to handle. And whatever method we decide to use to handle the objection, we'll get into that later. Number four, then we have to close again. So we don't go in here until we have a commitment. Out on the lot, we build value. This is where the car is sold. Remember, 80% of your selling is done in this presentation, demonstration step of the sale. On the lot, we build value, we close, we handle objections, and then we close again. And then, assuming we get a commitment, then we go inside. So out on the lot, we build value, we close, we handle objections, and we keep closing. Now, at the bottom of the page, inside, you finalize the sale. Once you get a commitment, you go in here, you do the paperwork, you negotiate, you finalize the sale. Number one, you complete the paperwork. Now, the paperwork. What's the paperwork? We've got a credit app or a customer statement. We've got our write-up or worksheet. You've got your appraisal slips, the other paperwork that you have to finish up. Number two, you negotiate. Now, you might want to underline if required. We also negotiate if required. And the reason I say if required, I don't know if you realize it, but 16% of the people pay sticker price plus for the vehicles. And I'm convinced that probably 30 to 40, maybe even 50% of the people would if we just ever asked for it. How many of you quit asking for sticker out here with your words? Customer said, how much is it? And you said, we're asking. What does we're asking imply? It implies we never expect to get. Out on the lot, and they said, how much is it? And you said, don't worry about that. We're real negotiable. How much is it? Don't worry, I can save you $1,000 or $1,500. If you give it away out here, you can't get it back in here. And I hear a lot of salespeople that think their managers are being sort of ridiculous on numbers in here when we start negotiating. The only reason that the manager sounds ridiculous hitting back at sticker price is because we gave it away out here. Your job, there's just a little key phrase to remember. You sell on your feet, you talk price on your seat. Out on the lot, you're standing up. So we don't talk price on the lot. We only talk price when we have a commitment and we're inside and it's time to talk price. Now, when I say don't talk price, they tell you, if they ask how much it is, tell them. I just mean don't get in this hum-ha about what trades are worth, what kind of payments they're going to look at, what rates are. Number three, you close the sale again for final approval. As you're negotiating, you have to close. Now, inside is no different than on the lot. When you close inside, you're going to get some objections. Number four, you handle the objections you get. And number five, you close again and again and again until you make the sale. So out on the lot, we build value, and we build value by following the basics. We'll go through this in a second. You close, you handle objections, you close. When you finally get a commitment, you go inside. You take care of the paperwork, credit apps, write-ups, appraisal slips. You negotiate if required, then you close, you handle objections, and you close again. You're continually closing and handling objections throughout your presentation. Out here on the lot, when they walk on the lot and say, we're just looking, you got your first objection. Now, we'll talk about what type of objection that is, but you have to handle that objection right away. And you get around that, you go along, and they say, boy, you guys want a lot of money for these. You just got your next objection. You're constantly handling objections throughout the selling process. They don't go away, so we have to learn to handle them. On the next page, let's look at a breakdown of, it's a better version than what I have here on the board, an easier way to look at it on page 11. Buying and selling is a step-by-step process. We've looked at the selling process. The top of the page here, let's look at the buying process. Our customers go through a 4-part process to buy something. First, they have to like you. Once they like you, they listen. Once they listen, they believe. And if they believe you, then they may buy. So the buying process is like, listen, believe, and buy. And we have to take them through this process. Now, the basic steps of selling, our job, that first impression, build rapport, greet the customer, investigate, present, and demonstrate, our basic steps of selling are designed to work people through this process. We make a first impression, we greet the customer, we build rapport, we investigate, we present, we demonstrate, and we prove it with our evidence manual if we need to. Now, if you don't make somebody like you, is it going to be easier or tougher for you to make the sale? I believe the biggest difference between the ups and the other people that we talked about before was the other people already like you. They already know you. They already trust you. And if you don't get this part, good luck getting this part. See, people don't buy things from people they don't like. If you remember that other statistic, 71% of the people said they bought the car because they like you, trusted you, and respected you. Now, the methods that we use to make them like us, those first 2 or 3 steps. We make a good first impression, we greet them properly, and we start building rapport. Building rapport is one of the most important parts of selling. In fact, every step here is critical, and we need to take them step by step. After this tape is over, I'd like you to sit down and look at page 11, especially the bottom, and look at the selling process and make sure you understand it, because as we close, we're going to close, and I'm going to share some things with you that depend on you understanding this first part. There are no secret tricks to closing and objections. We have to follow each step of the sale. If you skip this, you've got objections. You've got a serious buying objection. They don't like you. I don't know too many ways to overcome that. Professionals in sales realize that everything they do is the most important step they take. When I'm making a first impression, that's the most important step of the sale. Once I get through with that one, the greeting is the most important step of the sale. Once I'm through with that one, building rapport is the most important step. Building rapport and investigate tend to work together, and we'll touch on these two a little bit when we talk about the types of closing questions you need to learn, the types of questions that give you control. We're not going to get into presentations, demonstrations. This is a class on closing. Let's look at the steps that you need to take on page 12 to get better at closing. Again, like anything else, there's a process. If you want to get better at something, take it step by step. On page 12, learn to follow these 4 steps, and it'll be easier to learn anything, not just closing. Number 1, track or monitor your progress, whichever you want to write down. Track or monitor your progress. You've heard that old saying, if you don't monitor it, you can't control it. In fact, you probably have it memorized. Or don't expect what you don't inspect. The problem with these old sayings, we got to memorize, but we don't do any of this stuff. As a professional in sales, I can't imagine not tracking everything that I do. I want to know everything that's going on in my selling career out here. Under track and monitor your progress, right under number 1 there, the first sentence, it says, do you want to improve your closing ratio? Check yes or no. Go ahead and check it. It won't hurt. Next question, do you know exactly what your closing ratio is now? So you want to improve it, but if you're like most of the people in our 3-day class, you don't know what it is. How are you going to improve something that you don't know what is? And it's important to find that because number 2, we want to learn to set goals. The next step in getting better at anything is to set a goal to improve. But you can't set a goal if you don't know where you are. Goal setting, and we're going to talk about goal setting at the end of this section. Goal setting is a lot like traveling. If I want to go to Dallas, I call up the American Express travel agent. Now, they're at an 800 number in the middle of nowhere somewhere, and I call up and I say, I want to go somewhere. Now, one of the things that travel agent is going to ask me, they're going to say, where would you like to go? I'm going to say, I want to go to Dallas. And the next question would be, probably, when would you like to go there? Well, I'd like to be there next week, on Tuesday of next week. And they say, great. And then they ask me one more question. See, they're at an 800 number in the middle of nowhere. They ask me another question. They say, Joe, that's great. You want to go to Dallas. Where are you? Now, if I don't know where I am, they're not going to be able to get me to Dallas, are they? They said, Joe, where do you want to go? I want to go to Dallas. When do you want to be there? I'd like to be there Tuesday. Where are you? Gee, I don't know. I said, Joe, well, Joe, I have to know where you are to get you to Dallas. Now, goal setting is the same way. If you would like to close 30% of your customers that you talk to, but you don't know how many you're closing now, it's a shot in the dark. You won't know whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. At the end of the month, let's say that you were selling 10 cars and you wanted to improve your closing skills, and you worked real long, real hard, put in double shifts, and you sold 14 cars. Did you improve your closing skills? We don't know. We wouldn't know that unless we had tracked everything that you'd done. If we knew how many customers you talked to, how many presentations you made, how many write-ups you did, then we would know if you had actually improved. See, the problem is most of us, instead of tracking things, we work long, we work hard. We put in double shifts, we talk to twice as many people, we sell 2 or 3 more cars. Our closing ratio probably didn't improve. In fact, if anything, it probably went down. Given more opportunities, we take more shortcuts. And shortcuts is not the key to success. Following the basics, taking the steps is how you become more successful. Number 3 down here on page 12, developing the selling skills needed for improvement. Developing the selling skills. Another error that we make, a typical error. Again, when we want to sell more, we work longer and we work harder. You got to quit working long and hard. What you got to do is work smart instead. You want to track everything that you're doing. I want to know number of presentations, number of demonstrations, number of write-ups. I want to know even a breakdown of my customers. I talked to 4 people today, but what kinds of 4 people were they? Were they fresh ups, repeat customers, phone prospects? I want to start tracking so that I can find who my most productive customer is. Once I know that, when I want to sell more, I focus on the best people. So I hope that makes sense. Number 4, work with your best customers, which we will identify by having a good tracking program. Let's look at tracking and monitoring on the next page, page 13. Tracking and monitoring. There's 2 areas, especially with closing and overcoming objections, that we want to track and monitor. Number 1, 1A, we want to track the selling opportunities that you had to make a sale. And let's do this on a monthly. Let's say that last month we tracked things and we found out that we talked to 50 people, combination of ups, phone ups, repeat customers, referrals, a couple friends came in to see us. Let's say that we tracked our opportunities to do business, talked to 50 people. 1B, we also need to track our selling activities, the things that we did to try to sell these people a car. Now, selling activities, presentations, demonstrations, let's say that we gave 30 presentations, demonstrations to those 50 people. Now, let's say that we wrote up 20 of these 30 people that we gave presentations, and let's say that we sold 10 cars. So now I know how many people I talked to, I know what I did when I was with them, and I know the results. I've got opportunities, I've got activities. 1C, we need to track the results. These are my results. I sold 10 cars, made, give or take, $2,500. Now we can start figuring. Remember before I asked you if you knew what your closing ratio was? Now we know closing ratios. If I want to know my closing ratio of total opportunities, 10 of 50 is 20%. So I have a 20% closing ratio if I look at all of the people that I talked to. Now, if I look at just the people I gave presentations to, I have a 33% closing ratio. If I look at just the people I wrote up, I've got a 50% closing ratio. So I write up people, I close half of them. I present and demonstrate, I close a third of them. If I look at all the people, I close 1/5 or 20% of them. Now, if I want to sell more cars, I can go through and make adjustments, but I have to know that. The bottom of the, in fact, turn over, and we'll come back to the bottom of this page, turn over to page 14. And what I've done is, whether you use our planner, a lot of you have it, even if you don't, what I want to point out is in the bottom right corner of page 14, it says summary. Now, this is a summary of your week, and you can do this on a blank sheet of paper. You can almost do it on the back of a business card. But if you have our planners, it's a lot easier. It's already broken down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then it says summary of this week, and then it says summary of this month. At the end of every day, you want to go through and gather information, again, on opportunities. Now, we would also look for a breakdown of the opportunities. How many were to fresh walk-in customers? How many were to repeat and referral customers? How many were phone customers we got on the lot? How many were B-backs? We want to break down now of the people that we talked to. The other thing we want to do there, it says on the lot, and then we're talking about opportunities, then it says actions, or activities. It says actions, demos, write-ups. Then at the bottom it says results, deliveries, and how much money we earn. So this page, the bottom right side of this page, will gather this information for you. And it's a 2-minute job at the end of the day. And again, you can do it on the back of a business card, log it at some other point. But you have to gather it every day so that at the end of the month you have the totals. Now, turn back to the other page and let's talk about the bottom half down here. Page 13, the bottom half. We want to track opportunities, activities, and results, which we've done. Now at the bottom of the page on page 13, we want to track what we sold by customer type. Remember, if we sold a few ups, we sold a few repeat customers, we want to now track our sales. Where did these 10 sales come from? These 10 sales. What was one from a repeat customer, 2 from phone prospects, and the other 6 or 7, whatever it is, from walk-in traffic? It'd be kind of handy to know that because we want to start learning our averages in each area. Some areas you want to track by customer type, and I've got another sheet in here. We'll talk about it in a second. 2A, the number of walk-in customers you delivered. Number of walk-in customers you delivered. You want to know exactly how many of those you talked to and how many you delivered. B, you want to know the number of phone appointments you delivered. Now, we're talking about sold customers here, so everything is delivered. Walk-in customers you delivered. B, phone appointments you delivered. C, number of outside prospects you delivered. These would be people who came in from the outside, maybe a friend, an acquaintance that you brought in. D, the number of repeat customers you delivered. How many old friends do you talk to that month that you sent home in a car? E, the number of referrals. D was repeat, E was referrals. And F, we want to talk about the number of B-backs that you delivered. How many people did you talk to 3 or 4 times of these 50 opportunities? And then G, you want to track how much you earned for each group above. You want to break these down by earnings per type of customer so that you can, in fact, turn over to page 15. This is a page out of our planner on your sole customer log, your monthly sales log. And again, whether you use our page or somebody else's or create your own, you got to keep up with this stuff. On the bottom of the page, where it says number 13 and 14 on the page, it says totals for this page and end of month totals. What we want to do, we're only talking about the sold customers now. We're only talking about the 10. Of the 10 that we sold, what was the breakdown on them? Was it to that repeat customer? Was it walk-in traffic? You see under number 13, it says, for this page, we've sold 4 units. For this page, we had 1 fresh up, we had 1 repeat, 1 referral, 1 B-back. It asks us, it breaks it down and find our average. Which is better, your average on the repeat customer or your average on a fresh up? We sold 1, we made $225. The repeat customer, we sold 1, made $522. Which is better, $225 or $522? You know, after you do this every month, you start to understand which is better, and then your mind makes that little switch for you, and it says, whoa, Joe, we're focusing on the $122 one instead of the $522 one. Let's make the switch. Then if you made the switch, if a repeat customer was worth $500 and a walk-in customer is worth $200, if I still sold 10 cars, but I sold 1 more of those 10 to another repeat customer, would I make more or less money? Of course, I make more money. What we want to figure out is how we can start making more money. Let's look at some goals on page 15 that'll tie everything that we've talked about here together. We said to get better, you had to track and monitor your progress. You need to set some clear goals. We've tracked it. We've got a breakdown of the 10, and now we need to set some goals. Now, on page 16, goal setting is one of the most important things you'll ever do in your life. You need family goals, spiritual goals, financial goals, retirement goals, professional goals. Now, in professional goals, you need many professional goals. We're only going to talk about sales and earnings here for a minute. You need to build a solid repeat and referral base. You need happy customer scores. You want to maybe be the number 1 in your region, zone, the United States as far as your product goes. A lot of goals. We're only going to focus on production goals here for a minute. Now, when I started learning more about goal setting personally, I wasn't a goal setter. I was also an 80%er at the bottom of that page that we talked about. And then I started learning about goals, and I think the thing that got me excited about goal setting was that I found that very few people set goals. I was listening to some statistics, and Harvard Business School put out a statistic, and is anybody familiar with what % of the people set goals? Anybody in the room there? Is it a big number, little number? We'll start there. You're right, it's a very small number. I think I heard somebody say 3 or 5%. Only 3% of the people set goals, according to Harvard. Now, Harvard did some studies with the 3%. They wanted to find out if they were more or less successful than the average person. They found out that when we talk about money, the people who set goals, these 3%ers, make 10 times as much money as non-goal setters. I kind of perked up when I heard that. Gosh, you mean I could make 10 times as much money as everybody else if I just became a goal setter? So I got pretty interested. Then I heard an article or read an article about Purdue that did a study on goal setting. And they also found that 3% of the people set goals, which means 97% don't. They found out that the 3% who set goals have more money than the 97% combined. That's kind of like going to a table in Vegas and walking in there with a few $100s, and here's a table that says you can win almost every time you play it. And looking at another table that says here you'll lose, guaranteed, almost every time you play it. Which table would you play? I decided to go ahead and play the table. I decided to go ahead and do the things goal setters do, the most successful people do. What I found out is that not only are 3% of the people goal setters, but only 3% of the people are what we would call very successful. And it doesn't make sense to do it any other way. So let me share some things I learned with you on goal setting. We'll talk about how to set some goals using these figures that we've collected. Number one there on page 16. The two most important words in goal setting are two words that we've not learned. Realistic and achievable. Realistic and achievable. Last time I sat through a sales meeting and the manager went through the monthly highball session. We won't call it a goal setting session, we'll call it a highball session. And at the beginning of the month they went around the room, and here's Bob and Bill and Sue and Jim, and they were going around the room, and the manager said, okay, Bob, you sold 8 cars last month. What can you do for me this month? And this was supposed to be a goal-setting session. And the 8-car guy said something like, well, I can do you 12, something like that. And this guy said, well, shoot, if he can do 12, I can do 15. And this one said, if he can do 15, I can do 25. And this guy, not to be outdone, said, well, if they can do that, I can do at least 15. Now, when they got through with this, and I call it a highball session, I was doing my math in the back of the room. They got through with this, it came to 266 units. If you added this up over here and added their average, 266 is pretty good for a 116-car store. This is a joke. This doesn't do anything for you except hurt your progress. What we want to do is set goals that are so realistic and so achievable that we don't have any problem reaching them. We want to set long-term goals, not just short-term goals. We've got, our manager helps us set today goals, this weekend goals, and this month goals. They do that with spiffs and bonuses. How many cars can you sell me this weekend? $100 for 3 cars. There's a bonus for the top salesman of the month. We need some goals for our career. We're in the highest paying profession, in the best industry in the country, and most of us don't have a goal past tomorrow. You can completely control your career if you'll learn to set at least 1-year goals. Career goals, 15-year goals, 5-year goals would be great. If you never did any of that, at least start a year out from now, and we'll talk about that. In the middle of the page there, number 2, there are 3 types of goals you need to set. On A, B, and C, just write short, medium, and long. Short, B, medium, C, long. Short, medium, and long. Now, beside number C down there, the long-term goal, it says 1 year and longer. Underline or highlight, start here. You always start with a long-term goal and back it up. We've been taught to do just the opposite. We start with a short-term goal, and it's almost always a high ball. It's almost always unrealistic. And let me show you what I mean. Let's say that you've tracked and monitored everything, and you're at that 10-car range we were talking about. You know you're at 10 cars. Now, you want to set a goal for the future. Let's look a year from now. What would be a realistic goal for a 10-car person 1 year from today? 14, 15, 16 cars? Let's go with 14. Very realistic. This meets the realistic and achievable. Now, this is 1 year. So that we can track our progress, where do we need to be 6 months from now to be on track for our 1 year goal? If I need to be at 14, 12 months, 6 months from now I need to be at 12. Where do I need to be 3 months from now to be on track for my 1 year goal? I need to be at 11. Sounds like we have a very, very realistic goal for the next 90 days. You start breaking this down, I need to be at 10.3 the first 30 days, 10.6 the next 30 days, and at 11 the last 30 days. So these would be called baby steps, wouldn't they? We can take a big step by breaking it down into a series of shorter steps, or baby steps. One thing is that I see, and I did the same thing, is my pride, my ego got in the way when it came to goal setting. And if I was the 8-car guy, I wanted to throw out the 15-car goal so that I could feel good. The problem is I'll never hit it. And when you learn to fail at goal setting, you become used to failing. I don't want to say failure, because not everybody does. But you sure set yourself up for failure when you set unrealistic and unachievable goals. This kind of goal, to get from 10 to 11 cars in 90 days, there's not a person watching this that couldn't raise your sales by a car every 90 days. What would you do to raise your sales by 1 car? So that's the next part of goal setting. You need a plan. How would you sell this 1 extra car? I want to sell 1 more car in the next 90 days. What would you do to do that? Would you get better at closing? Would you improve your follow-up program? Would you go out and give more presentations, demonstrations, treat more people as buyers? We need to take a look at that breakdown we had before, our tracking. Remember, we talked to 50 people, we presented 30, we wrote 20, we delivered 10. Now's where we need this information so that we can improve. Number 3, at the bottom of the page down there are 2 kinds of goals that you need to set. You need a results goal. Let's say that your results goal, this is a result, 10 is our result, and we have a results goal. Let's say that we made $2,500 and we sold 10 cars, and we have a results goal to get to $3,500. Now, there's several ways you could get from $2,500 to $3,500. You could sell 4 more cars. You could raise your gross by $100 a unit on 10 cars. That would meet you an extra $1,000. You could talk to more repeat and referral customers, switch groups of people. That would make it easier to sell to. You could, in fact, let's just look at numbers of units so we don't get confused. Let's say that our gross stayed the same on each car. We make about $250 a car. That's how we got to $2,500. So to raise this just using units, we need to be at 14 cars. Now let's look at how to get from 10 to 14 cars. What are we going to do to sell those extra 4 cars next month so that we can meet our results goal? What are the activities that we'll need? Well, at the bottom there, B, we need activity goals. We've got to figure out how to get there. And then there's some examples down there. A, if we wanted to work on this area, if we talked to 70 people instead of 50 people, our closing ratio was 20%. So 70% times 20% equals what? 70 times 20% is 14 units. So we can hit our 14-car goal by talking to 70 people instead of just 50 people. That would be one way to sell 4 more cars. What can we do in this area? B, we could still talk to 50 but demonstrate 43. 43 times 33%, remember that was our closing ratio on presentations, equals 14 cars. Or C down here, we could still talk to 50, but we could write up 28 instead of just 20. 28, remember our closing ratio on write-ups was 50%, so 50% of 28 equals 14. A lot of ways we can sell 14 cars. And D, we could talk to 50 people but improve your closing ratio to 28%. So once we have the numbers, we can figure out a lot of ways to do this. We could look at our income. Let's see, I sell 10 cars, I make $2,500, so I make $250 a car. If I wanted to make an extra $1,000 and I only sold 10 cars, I'd have to make an extra $100 a car. So if I made another 100 a car times 10, there'd be my extra 1,000. So I got that. I could do that by changing my gross. Now, how do we raise the gross? You build more value. How do you build more value? You follow the basics. How do you follow the basics? You don't get sidetracked with those minor objections we were talking about. We need to get you on track. We need you to chart everything that you're doing so that you can set realistic goals. Again, we're going to talk about how to close and how to overcome objections. But without a good, clear goal to succeed, you won't know if you got better or you just work longer. My intention is not to teach you how to work longer. What I found is when I talk to the most successful people around the country, is the best ones don't work longer and they don't work harder. They work short and they work smart. They go to work, they get the job done, and they go home. They don't beat around the bush. They realize that the only reason they go to work is to sell a car. They visit as part of the selling process, but their purpose with every customer is to turn it into a delivery. And we can learn to do that without any push and shove techniques. In fact, Ben Franklin said that this has to be a win-win. He said if you want to win the negotiation, if you want to make the sale, you've got to cover the features, the advantages, and benefits to the other person. To do that, we've got to find their buying motives, their hot buttons. We do that by investigating, building rapport. Selling is a step-by-step process. Take the steps, sell more cars. Track your progress, set good goals, be as successful as you'd like to be. Go ahead and review this section, and I'll see you on the next tape, and we'll talk about specific skills that you need to work on as you become a better closer. I'll see you then.
This concludes this segment of your training program. To ensure your future success in sales, if you don't already have Joe's personal management system, have your manager call us today. It's a quick and easy way to log your daily activities, maintain a consistent follow-up system, and track your results. And be sure to complete the homework assignment for this tape before you go on to the next tape. Good luck on the quiz, too, and we'll see you in the next tape. Training program.